Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Unabridged Gamer interview. Today, I am joined by Devin and Joe, the developers of Fathom. For those who don't know, what is Fathom?
Oh, am I to answer that one? Well, I'll start. It's a action RTS that's set underwater. That's kind of the one-liner, but it's a lot going on in the game. I would say if, you're into Descent, that's kind of one of our inspirations. So it's got that kind of 6 degrees of freedom motion and tries to tie in some RTS elements, with like base building and unit building and even a little bit of unit commanding. So, it's just meant to be kind of a hybrid. We tried to boil it down so it was, reasonably usable, not like overly complicated, but, evidently I suck pretty bad at it. So maybe I need to dumb it down even for myself. But yeah, it's a hybrid genre game that, we're hoping to kind of get out there.
All right. And, Joe, what is the story of Fathom?
Well, about, I don't know, it's probably 2002 or 2003. I was binge watching all these sci-fi movies and playing a lot of Homeworld. And it's like the underwater sci-fi movies like The Abyss or Deep Star 6 or Leviathan, all those, but especially The Abyss. But so I'm watching that, and I'm a giant Aliens fan, and so all this stuff kicking around in my brain, and I thought it'd be really cool to do something like Homeworld, but in like an alien underwater environment. Devin and I had worked on a mod for an Unreal tournament, and so he codes, and I'm the art guy. So I said, hey, let's do this RTS game. And back then, or Unreal or anything like that was available, just right off the shelf. And so the tools weren't there, and we tried it for, I don't know, probably six months, or I don't know, maybe a little longer than that, but Devin was having to basically develop all the tools, and it just wasn't going to happen for a two-man team to build a full RTS game. So, we kind of dropped that, and it kind of fell apart. And then, years later, probably, I don't know, like a year and a half, Devin and I stayed in touch, and he's like, hey, I'm doing this new stuff in Unity with this game. I have, you want to do some art for it? I said, sure. So we started working on that. And as it kind of evolved, we worked on that game, which is like a kind of a puzzle type game. And then we worked on like a kind of a swords game. Like I don't know what kind of game.
Yeah, I don't know. We were just experimenting with all kinds of different
Yeah, so we had all these things, and so we kind of kept going back to the Fathom idea, and I'm like, well, instead of doing like a full-on RTS, I think Devin actually mentioned it first. So instead of doing something that's that huge in scope, let's narrow it down and do something that's a little more action-oriented, that's multiplayer, and it's just been like this progression of like kind of mix and match ideas. Let's try this, and that doesn't work, that does work, and then at the same time trying to fit it into the Fathom universe, so because we have like all of this, like a lot of art and story and background and things like that from the first go around, and so all of this canon has already been created, so we make it fit within that universe. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job with coming up with something that's as original as it can be, and and it's still fun to play. So I have I don't want to get my hopes too high, but I think it's a it's a fun game right now.
And how would you say actually your past work working on stuff like Quake and Unreal influenced your design decisions and everything like that? Because that's the advantage that you guys have over a lot of other developers. I've seen some people just jump right into it out of nowhere, whereas you actually built up a fair amount of credence and experience over time.
Yeah, well, for me, just building art assets, over the years, you're getting higher polygon counts and larger texture maps, and then normal maps, and all this stuff has kind of progressed, and that's cool, I do illustration and animation as a freelancer as my day job. So, it's kind of all the same thing to me, but Devin can tell you more about the coding side of it. He'll have much better insight than I would on that.
Yeah, working on mods, they kind of say that when you're getting into tutorials and stuff for coding, that it's, it's a good foundation. Because you're not starting from scratch, and you can kind of see, how people lay out code in, a somewhat full-scale game. Like I started on Quake 1, and then I was doing like map editing and stuff for Doom, and I would mess around with that too. But I was always like into coding from the beginning, and I just gravitated towards games because, I like playing them. So yeah, I would say the mods, definitely had a influence on how I built what we have now, just incrementally, like starting with smaller things and kind of expanding outward from there, and just, keeping everything organized definitely helped to have some background there. And then, I would say, just the games themselves, like, we're probably going to cite Homeworld a lot, just for look and feel, and just kind of that aesthetic that we thought was really cool, and we just love that. And so, I would say that's a pretty good influence on some of the look and feel. But I think we go our own route too. We're trying to put our own spin on it. Obviously, it's a different environment being underwater, so we tried to not make things look too spaceshipy, which it's surprisingly difficult to do. But, we spent a lot of time coming up with ideas. Our workflow is usually Joe will come up with a rough mold of what we're thinking for a particular unit or a particular idea we had. And then he'll share his desktop and we'll just, beat it up until we think it's like not too cliche, spacey and, and underwatery, I guess.
That's actually kind of stretching the truth, Devin.
How so?
Usually I'll come up with an idea and show it to Devin. He goes, nope, hate it. So then then we'll do a screen share and we'll come up with something else. He'll go, do this. And so, we're sketching this in real time. And so he'll go, yeah, I like that. I go, well, I hate that. So then we kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And usually the original idea is not really.
I don't even think that's true. I think what happens is you come up with what you like, and then I say I hate it. And then you get all quiet. And then I think like, oh man, I pissed him off. And then I'm just like, no, I like it. And then, usually what I'll do is I'll walk away for like a day and then come back and be like, you know what? This is actually really great. I don't know what the problem is. And that's happened probably more often than not.
Yeah, that's happened a pretty good bit. Yeah, it's kind of growing on me. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff, to answer your original question, was, I think having background in particularly the mods that we did, it was a lot of vehicle based stuff even before. Mm-hmm. So that kind of transcended, I guess, where it would be, or at least influenced the look and feel that we have now for this game, I think.
Yeah, you really threw away a lot of genre conventions with Fathom. I mean, it's as much a first-person vehicle action game as it is strategy, all while having to do it in that full 360-degree space. How did that impact the game's design? Because I don't even want to even imagine having to do things like AI pathing and just trying to get it all working right there so they can navigate everything in a 360-degree space.
Yeah, well, this was a very, complicated subject for us when we were throwing it all together because, yeah, it's a lot to ask of any user. It's just, try and orient it in this space while trying to build things and while trying to, issue commands. So I tend to be, kind of a multitasker of sorts. And so, I didn't want just to make descents and then, just kind of keep it at that. I wanted to add a little bit more. And yeah, maybe this will be, difficult for a lot of people, but I've been trying to, I think we've both been trying to kind of capture the essence of those genres without going too deeply into them. I would say if you can play descent and, at least reasonably comfortably, you can, the RTS elements that we added aren't that, overshadowing. You don't have to be a master of tactics or a StarCraft genius to be able to be competitive in this game.
There's not a lot of micromanaging and things.
Yeah, I guess that's a good.
So it's more like an Orcs Must Die level of strategy. There's enough there that there's something to dig into, but not too much that someone who's just more of an action gamer can't find some fun in.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you couldn't play the game without using some sort of strategy element to it. But like Devin was saying, it's kind of like we took the fun stuff from each one of the games. It was like Descent. The Descent was fun because you're flying around in this 3D space shooting stuff. So we said, well, we have to have that. And then the RTS stuff is, it's almost, it reminds me of it's almost like the command rows in Battlefield, when you're giving orders, or if you think about the old Tribes games, it's kind of like that. So it's kind of like, like the function keys basically are your command menu. So you can issue commands really fast based on groups. So units are, when you build units, they're built in certain groups. You can tell it build in group 1 through, Devin's added, 8 groups now.
So a bit like a hybrid of Brothers in Arms and Halo Wars.
I would think so. I never played Halo Wars, but from what I hear of it, yeah, it's because I know that translated to, that's the one that was on the Xbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, we kind of are intending to at least try and target that platform too. So just implicitly, you kind of have to, I don't want to use the word simplify, but it's kind of simplifying the
control scheme.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, we've tried to keep it manageable, in that regard. And I think in doing that, we're hoping to reduce the tax on your brain as you're playing, because it's very easy to get carried away with features and all these different ideas, and it's a lot to throw at a player. But I think we've refined it to the point now where it comes reasonably natural. I won't say there's like no learning curve, but I think we've boiled it down. And like Joe said, there's not a whole lot of micromanagement. There are commands, and it's all broken into squads. So you can kind of say group 5 guard here, group 1 follow me. It's almost like a space sim in a way. If you've ever played like the Wing Commander X-Wing series, it's more, I would say, closer to that, where you kind of target something, say go attack that, or where hold my position here. It's not really super involved. You're not going to be dancing your units back and forth, or things that would be traditional to a top-down RTS. I mean, the other thing is, and this was kind of a source of contention, is I'm trying to walk that line between when you throw RTS and FPS. When you just say those things to somebody, it does evoke a sort of here we go. This is going to be a ridiculously complicated game. And I would say, the people that have played the game so far, I think are starting to understand that, we're not really making an RTS game per se. I would say it's more leaning towards FPS action with RTS kind of elements to it. The people that I'm going to target with this game are the Descent players. They're not really the StarCraft players. I mean, if they want to play it, that's excellent. But I would say that the biggest thing to get over would be the perspective and the action part. And if you're not into that, then that's probably, it's probably not going to be the greatest game for you.
But to your original question, this popped in my head, but for the game design for the environment, we went back and forth for months about what to do, with depth, is there a penalty for going too deep or too shallow or whatever. So I think we kind of have it worked out now, a pretty decent system worked out now. So some units can go deeper than other units can, and there's rewards for going to the seafloor, but you can only do it in certain units that can handle the pressure and things like that. But one of the things we wanted almost immediately when we were talking about designing something in 3D space is the ability to build your base without having to be so close to another unit. So you can build one of my favorite things to do in the game now is to build capital ship factories above Devin's base, so I can just crank out capital ships and drop them straight down on his base. So any of the units, once you build them, we use a beacon system, and so you build a beacon for whatever unit or structure you want to call down from the surface. You build this beacon at your base. You grab the beacon and then take it to wherever position on the map you want it, and you drop it, and it shoots a beam up to the surface, and then the structure will follow the beam down into place. So which adds a little bit more strategy to the game, because you can actually shoot the beacons before the structure drops down, and you can make things guard things. You can kind of fortify everything in 3D space, by placing beacons. I was really happy with that whole mechanic.
Yeah, sounds very interesting.
Yeah, if you picture it kind of like if you played Dawn of War, how the humans kind of call down their structures and they kind of unfold and build. It's kind of like that concept, but in 3D, I guess you'd say, where you can put things above and below each other. So we were just kind of toying around with that idea initially, and then it just seemed to kind of mesh well with what we were trying to do with this game, and so it's kind of stuck. And we've tried to balance it such that I know a lot of people hearing that would think, oh well, if I can do that, I can put any structure anywhere. But a lot of it's managing them too, and being able to defend them. And it's putting Joe putting capital factories above my base and just having them rain down doesn't always work, because I'll see them and just knock them out. And it's hard to defend something that's further away from your normal fortifications. So yeah, I mean we've been playing it a long time now, and it seems reasonably balanced. We've had quite a few different people test it with different strategies and different tactics, and yeah, I mean it's starting to evolve into something that I haven't really felt like I've seen before, but is still strangely familiar, and that's kind of what we're going for. So
yeah, and that's the one thing that I've noticed about it is you focused very specifically on the balance, and unlike a lot of multiplayer games recently, they've been trying to tout that, oh, you get this many people, you get 64, you get 100. You guys went with 4. You went with 4 players and have given the game almost kind of a Dota-ish tone, like Aramec Arena, on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
did
I
you
mean,
come to that number? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, some of that is actually rooted in just old school style gaming. Like we said, we came from the modding community from like Quake One, and there's a lot of games where you can just kind of pop in and pop out, or just play a match and be done. It seems like a lot of games are very focused on persistence now, and having this account and whatever, and leveling up, and I just kind of wanted to make a game that was just a fun kind of LAN party game, but you can obviously take it beyond that. But it's one of those things that I wanted to kind of convey with it too, was that we remember what those old school games were like, and and those LAN parties that we used to throw over our buddy's house. It's kind of in that realm of just thinking when we were building this game, and to have that feel.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen that. So the game will not have any kind of progression system?
At least not to start. I mean, the scale of that may, at first it was just kind of like, we're making like a match-based system, and maybe we should have accounts and all that. But being a two-man team, we haven't really gotten that far. I mean, it's hard to build an entire infrastructure of account login system and persistence and databases and backends and stuff when if people just think the game sucks. So we're starting off with like, this is our idea. We want people to play it, obviously, and give us feedback in terms of, how playable is this game? Do you enjoy it? What things are too complicated? What things do we do right? We're trying to experiment too. Push the envelope, I guess, in terms of what you can do with these genres, and just try something new.
And branching off of that, Devin, as the project's programmer, you've had to put together pretty much the entire multiplayer games, coding, matchmaking, all of that on your own.
Yeah,
I've
pretty much.
seen and heard teams with multiple programmers balk at the task.
Yeah, I'll balk too.
How have you managed to do that? Because, as you said before, and you have on your Twitter, you're working a full-time job, and you're a father on top of this.
Yeah, so it's been... it's one of those things that's nice about being a hobbyist developer, is you can kind of set your own pace, and I don't try to, I don't have any, I guess you'd call it deadlines. So I just do little bits at a time here and there. Usually at night, if I'm really, if I get in the zone code-wise, I'll stay up, have a really late night, and then, have 2 really terrible days after that. But yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. You start building something small, and then you add to it, and you add to it, and you add to it. And, usually I have a target in mind. I want to get some feature in there. And, I'll set aside, I'll just say, this week is the multiplayer week. This week is the, it's normally not that vague where it's multiplayer. It's usually like, this week I'm going to get the chat system in. This week I'm going to do the lobby and, and the color changing or whatever, and it's just little piece by little piece. And, I'm pretty good at breaking apart big tasks into smaller things. And I think that's what, was kind of the hallmark of this whole project, was just being able to take something big and make it into small pieces and put them all together slowly,
It doesn't hurt that he's a really good programmer, too.
I am not a good programmer. In fact, I'm not one of those egotistical, code gurus. I will not toot my own horn on this, because I know if I show this, this code to people, they'll be like, man, this guy's like a schizophrenic or something like that.
But for an art guy, it's awesome to, like if I'm in the engine, playing around with something or come up with an effect or something, and to go, it'd be really cool. This would be really helpful if I had something that would do, I could just randomly scatter objects, or I could, just something artistic, that I need that would make it easier, and then literally in 30 minutes have it. I mean, every art guy would kill for that.
Yeah, so, I can imagine.
That's super handy.
Yeah, and I didn't really credit Unity in terms of that. I mean, Unity has really made doing things like that, like building tools or just standing up a prototype of any sort, really easy. I mean, it's insanely easy compared to what it was 10 years ago, where you had to build tools, and that's what killed our project before, was just I was spinning my wheels writing, and just you get this little piece of like a level editor or something like that, which in itself, I mean, people make money off of just building level editors for games.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to do that during that time with Quake and Doom and stuff. So, I got to build the game and build those things, and that was just an insane amount of work. So, with Unity, it's really easy, and I haven't really gotten into Unreal Engine, but I would venture to guess that modern engines are making more complicated games much more approachable for smaller teams, just because of all the things they do and the way they've really kind of refined that workflow on how to do it.
And Joe, as the project's artist and the original and lead writer, how have you gone about creating the lore and setting in Fathom? And can you give us any details on it? And how much of your original design ideas for how the story and all that would work remain?
I don't know how much it we'll see in this version of the game, but the entire canon back from the original story was, there's for this game, it's kind of happened after the big events of what the RTS game was going to be, and hopefully, if this game goes well, we'll be able to revisit that and expand on that. But right now, it's basically dueling like resource mining companies, and it's kind of like they go to a planet and mine these resources, and it's like the Wild West. So there's no sort of law in place or whatever, because it's too far out in the reaches of space, and so basically whichever corporation claims the most amount of resources, most amount of real estate on that particular planet, the rest of the mining operations kind of have to follow their set of guidelines and their set of rules. So it's basically like the Wild West, underwater in a spaceship with sea creatures, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, it's that whole kind of industrial sci-fi, like that whole vibe. Like I'm really into that, and and there's characters with backstories and about how, like right now, you like in this game, you only like you can kind of farm resources from the enemies, like what's a good game that does that, Devin?
Dota.
Yeah, so like you can farm resources from enemies. So anytime you destroy an enemy in game or one of the NPCs in game, the debris that flies off from it is metal, and then you have a resource collector that will automatically go from your base to whatever you destroy and pick up that scrap, and that's basically the currency for the game. That's the resource for the game.
One of them.
Yeah, one of them. So that's how everything works. So you try to acquire more metal to build bigger and bigger things. So but the bad guys that you're fighting now are drones, and we haven't really explained up until this point where the drones came from, or who made them or whatever, because it's an alien technology. And so I really hope that we get to do like another project or another game that has that explains all that we can maybe have a little bit bigger team and can go into detail with, this is how they got here, this is who they are, and this is how we first discovered them, this was first contact, and this is what kicked off this this massive.
Yeah, we have a lot of that outlined, but this game is very multiplayer focused. We really wanted to just get the game mechanics out there and see if people liked them, and then I think the key to immersing people is at least starting with a good game. I mean, you can tell a good story, but at the end of the day, if people don't like what they're playing, it's just the story doesn't matter that much, or maybe it does for some, but the drive here was to see if we could make a cool game that kind of was a compromise between our interests, and had that overall look and feel that we both liked. And then the plan is to go back and we wanted to make a single player experience, a campaign, because we have all that stuff outlined. It was just a matter of doing all the assets and the voiceover
and
work.
Scripting all that stuff. Yeah, it's just so time consuming.
And it's going to cost, and that's the thing that we may kickstart at some point is, getting all the voice talent, because, I mean, Joe can only do so many different redneck voices. And I can do only, so many nasally, nerdy white boy voices. So, yeah, I mean, we got to, kind of expand upon that as well. I mean, we have characters laid out, and, like I said, there is a canon that we were kind of following with this, but we took it a little bit further, and if we get enough interest, which I would love, just to, have people ask questions like that, saying like, what are these things? Where do they come from? And I would love to answer that in a game, that would really kind of, tell an interesting story, or at least a more immersive experience. But for now, it's just kind of like, well, try this out, see if you like it. Do you like where we're going with, do you like this environment? If we get a good enough reaction, yeah. I mean, and even if we don't, we probably will do it anyway.
Yeah. Right now it's kind of like, jump in a multiplayer game and kill your friends, and if you like the environment, maybe we'll do one.
Would you consider maybe something kind of light on story, but hint a little bit more in like a cooperative mode down the line?
The game now does have a cooperative mode in it. It's more of like a I don't want to say tower defense, but whatever.
Wave defense.
Yeah, it's like a wave defense where you have your two bases together, and I just send units in waves, towards your bases, trying to destroy, and they get heavier and heavier and heavier. But that was really just kind of thrown in as a fun thing to do. It's not like, in its current state, it's not particularly balanced or fair. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't really explored it too much. I just kind of put it in there. But a lot of the testing that we're doing is on competitive multiplayer at this point. But it is something I'd like to expand on as well. And just have some different modes to try some different things, and do a co-op game. That would be fun. Sure.
You're also planning Oculus Rift support. How do you plan on having the VR headset impact the player's experience in Fathom?
It's not something I'm going to push as a requirement, or anywhere close to that. It's more just of a immersive thing. So, Descent in itself and that style of gameplay where you're whipping around in all different directions, I mean, that's pretty cool and immersive on its own, but throwing the Oculus into it, just seemed like a natural progression. And we actually already have that stood up, and, we're experimenting with it. I mean, it's funny. I can't really play with the game with the Oculus for very long. I just get really sick. But
I really like it, though. I mean, when he first got it working, I was like, let's try this immediately. And I played it for a long time like that, and I really dig it. I mean, just the immersion in it, and just the
sense of depth, I think, is the coolest thing about the Oculus.
Because it's underwater, so there's not, it's not like most first-person games where you're running down a hallway and you have all these things in your perspective that you can judge distance by. So underwater, when you look at something, you're like, oh, well, that might be really small close to me, or just really big far off. But with the Oculus, you can see like the bubbles, like in 3D basically, and it just, I mean, I think it's really, really cool. I mean, I'm pretty stoked about it, actually.
Yeah, it's got a nice feel to it. Just that sense of depth and that sense of distance to things really, it broadens the, just the whole feel and the immersive sense. It's very. And
it kind of makes the cockpit of the sub feel a little claustrophobic. Like right now, it's just like most games it's on the screen, but with the Oculus, you're kind of like, man, I'm like stuck in this tin can. There's all this water outside of me. So which is that the immersion to it is really what's really cool about it.
Yeah, and the water environment is just pretty cool in general. That's why we threw in a lot of little doodads and little sharks and fish swimming around to kind of give you that sense. Like, you're not going to really notice it when you're in the middle of action and, flying around. But, I find when I have the Oculus on and I'm just kind of floating around and, I sit still, I'm like, whoa, oh my God, that shark looks kind of real now, when it has that kind of depth to it. So it adds quite a bit if you can stomach it.
Indeed. All right, gents. Well, I believe we have reached the end of our interview. But as I said, at the end of all my interviews, I like to let my interviewees ask me and or my audience a question. So feel free to ask away.
Yeah, you can ask about the hat.
Yeah, I like the hat, but are you tired of 2D side-scrolling zombie procedural generated survival games yet?
All right. Well, thank you both for sitting down with me today. If you guys want to see more of Fathom, be sure to click the annotation I'm probably putting over my face right now. And be sure to follow Devin and Joe on Twitter. Could you guys say your Twitter handles for those listening.
Yeah, I think it's at Fathom Game, and that's the Twitter, and then the Facebook, I think it's Fathom the Game. Is that what it is, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the website's fathomthegame.com. So yeah, check it out. Let us know. We're really interested in feedback at this point.
All right. You gents have a good night.
Cool. Thanks, Elijah.
Thanks, man.
Take care.